That's exactly what we do. So, see, the first thing is we ask ourselves, is this a business which is within our circle of competence? If it's a very high tech business, or if it's a business in the chemical industry, or mining industry, I won't touch them. So it has to be an easy to understand business, where I can easily go and figure it out. And fortunately, or there's also downside about it. So Fanliang and I, we kind of have similar ideas on these. So once we see that this is and we have a liking for exponential, asset
Could
light businesses.
let me interrupt you. Could you please tell us about Funliang?
Yeah, sure. So Fan Liang is my partner. He lives in Melbourne, Australia. So he used to be in Singapore. I got to know Fan Liang because we used to mastermind together. We had a mastermind group. In fact, some of the group members are there on our MoneyWise Smart investment forum on Facebook.
And
So
by the way, could you tell us about MoneyWise Smart so we can keep the conversation going? But prior to that, we should all of us
sure.
should understand what is MoneyWise Smart.
Sure. So about 5, 6 years back, when I realized that I'm really enjoying this, I decided that I also want to blog about it. I also want to, document my learnings so that it can benefit my two boys when they grow up. Because one thing I definitely feel uh, I wish when I was a teenager, I wish I had a mentor who could, teach me about money. So I come from a family where both my parents, they were professors. My dad was a professor, my mom was a teacher, and uh, so when I grew up, uh, and I come from a part of India where making money is not exactly the highest priority. Uh, so I was brought up to believe that the stock market is basically, you get cheated, you end up losing money in the stock market. So all the wrong ideas. No wonder it took me a few decades to come out of that. So once I started reading, I really started enjoying. I decided that I'm going to document it, and that's how MoneyWise Smart was born. It was purely a hobby, which on and off I used to blog. Then it became a serious affair, and I decided to kind of to actually uh, it's more from the point of view of giving back, because I realized that the problems which I faced with investing, uh, I'm not alone. I mean, there are millions and millions of people, literally hundreds of millions of people, who suffer from exactly the same problem. I mean, unfortunately, our education system, irrespective of the country you're from, they do an absolute lousy job in teaching kids about money. I mean, in high school you learn about compound interest, but no one really uh, learns how to apply compound interest to your life, to your day-to-day life. So that was my goal of teaching people to invest the right way. And I started writing, and then, as you know, we created a comprehensive investment investing fundamentals course, which is a comprehensive course, starting from the basics, go absolutely in depth, uh, uh, telling people how to teaching people how to analyze financial statements, how to value a business. And then recently we also launched a course on options called Option Series. So Funli and I, we were part of a small group of 5 people. We used to mastermind. We used to analyze businesses together, and Fanyang is a very smart guy. I mean, he's a lot younger than me, but very smart. So I reached out to him separately, and I, told him about my vision, and he got interested. So I told him that, Fanliang, why don't we do it together? It's always great to do it together. That way you have a sounding board, And it's not that Fan Liang and I agree on everything, and it's a great process, when like this company that you told me about last weekend. So both he and I, we have been reading about it, we have been discussing. I even reached out to those guys in Spain who covered the business. We had some email exchanges. In fact, I was going to share with you separately about this. So that's a great process. Most importantly, uh, we act as not only a sounding board but also devil's advocate to the other person's ideas. We try to kill the other person's ideas,
That
and
is.
and, and that is very helpful. Like sometime back, Fanya, he was excited about a business, but I kind of managed to poke quite a few holes on that. He does exactly the same thing. So uh, he has this healthy skepticism in his mind. I think I get carried away much faster, so he kind of acts as that counterbalance, which is great, which is absolutely.
Do you feel the same rush as I do when I find a what I feel is a great business? At least I feel really happy and wow, I found it. It's like a treasure hunt.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It does. So I have a few checks and balances which I have implemented. One is, uh, you would have noticed we spent a lot of time uh, learning about a business. That literally the learning process. Like for example, China maple leaf. We started looking at China maple leaf 3 years back, and we are still learning new things about China maple leaf. And even the businesses which we decide to invest in, it's not that we just jump in and put in all our money. So even that investing happens over time. As we build our conviction, we buy more. you know uh, there have been other businesses that we have been buying over long periods of time, and along with that we also sell put options to acquire more shares of these businesses on an ongoing basis. So I consider myself as an accumulator. I keep accumulating businesses over time. I hardly sell. In fact, I don't care much about selling. Sometimes, of course, if there's a major fraud or a major fundamental problem, like for example, if I had I invested in a, you know let's say uh, a business like Kodak, and then you definitely get to know that what their time is uh,
Has come.
has come, and the world has moved past them. I mean, those are instances where I would sell, but otherwise, uh,
By
I
the
like
way,
to own the businesses for a very long time. Yeah,
the goal of this conversation wasn't discussing particular ideas, but as long as we're here, we can discuss them. I think the company you were talking about was Pax Global, one
yeah,
company
that's right. Yeah,
profiled
yeah,
by Gabriel Castro, who is a
that's right.
Spanish young guy, really bright guy, and he
Yeah,
found this
yeah,
company which is trading for almost the cash it has on the balance sheet.
yeah.
It's the third place in POS, point of sales devices. The first is Ingenico. The second one, I don't recall the name right now.
Verifone.
Very fun. And then there's
Actually,
this
PAX is bigger than Verifone in
very
terms of
bigger
their
than very fun.
global sales, as per the Nielsen report. By the way, I'm sure you mentioned to your viewers that these are not recommendations, right? We are just
Exactly.
discussing. Yeah.
Mhm.
So PAX
And
happens to be bigger than Verifone. Yeah.
my doubt in PAX, and I've talked to Gabriel several times, is the possibility for fraud, right? Why is it so cheap? And that's the big question. Gabriel has told me that they have done incredible work going through the financials, reconstructing all the financials, all of that, and he sees no signs of it. But that's
Yeah.
always one big fear. And
Yeah.
at least for me as a European investor, I would like to know about, and this happened to me as well with China Maple Leaf. I researched it and I ended up not investing in it because I have some reservations.
Mhm.
And as you are on that side of the world, much closer to China, uh, what are your thoughts on this? How do you say, on this, me and other Western investors being cautious about Chinese companies?
Okay. First of all, specifically about PAX, I think I'm too new to it. I mean, because I got to know about PAX only from you just last week when we were speaking. So I'm still not. I mean, I have got a fair amount of idea. We have done a fair amount of work. I have read their annual report. I've read all the documents. Have been interacting with Gabriel, but I think I still need much more. So I can't talk about PAX in a very knowledgeable way. But in general, about I think this China phobia is a very common thing, especially among Westerners. And I think as a result, in the process, there is also a possibility of you missing out interesting opportunities. Look, uh, you know, I come from the fundamental school of thought that you know. For me, the opportunities are everywhere. I mean, I consider myself as a global citizen. I have lived in 4 different continents, in 5 different uh, countries. Even though right now Singapore is home, have been exposed to different parts of the world. So I don't think it's a very uh, sensible approach of just developing a blanket bias against a country. There are a lot of great businesses in China. There are great businessmen in China. It's a country of 1.5 billion people.
Rupam, don't get me wrong. I am tremendously bullish on China. An amazing country, and it will generate a lot of great companies as it is right now. It's just the stories, the tradition, or the repetition of not so good stories is high, and the a there is a saying in Portuguese. I don't know how exactly to translate it to English, but it's the cat who has been burned with hot water once will be afraid of
Already
cold
on the
water.
stove. Yeah, yeah, that's right. No, it's a company. See, look, Manuel, I'm sure you have read enough about uh, frauds in different countries. Now I make it a point to not form an opinion about a country or about based on media. First of all, the mainstream media. I mean, we can do better. And I think we have the intellectual ability. There's no reason for us to think that a journalist sitting out there, who probably is also sourcing their information from second-hand sources, should know better than what I would do. Now, there have been enough companies in the US which have been fraud. We know about Enron, we know about Tyco, WorldCom. There have been enough companies. White collar. There have been frauds everywhere. India, there have been enough fraud. So you name a country which hasn't seen fraud. Germany. I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah,
You have read about Wirecard.
Wirecard.
So
Yeah.
it can happen everywhere. Now, for me, I think I have been fortunate enough to visit China quite a few times. And again, by the way, I do not read the the, I do not consume the traditional media. Of course, I read some parts of it, but I don't watch TV. I don't watch news on TV. If I need to find out information, I rely a lot on Google Alert. And I have visited China several times. My elder son speaks Chinese. In fact, his second language, he took Chinese. He spent time in China as an exchange, part of an exchange program, went and lived with the Chinese family. We have extensively visited China. I would like to visit more. And I see absolutely no reason to completely, completely remove such a huge country with so many
let me
opportunities
ask let me
are
ask,
investing
let
and
me ask you
rely.
this way, and I think we're talking a lot about some minor detail, but for instance, when you are a shareholder of a company, you have rights and you are entitled to, well, at least theoretically, to a part of the assets of that company, right? So whenever you have a VIE structure, a variable entity structure, um, that doesn't own the assets in China, you're
Yeah,
effectively buying a
contract,
company that doesn't give you any protection, right?
a
Um,
contract.
so you don't have the right to the claim to those assets. So that's one, just one thing that I'd like to point out. But you are perfectly aware of that, of course.
No,
Um,
I'll tell you, even it's a fact that even I feel uncomfortable about it. I would have preferred to do it like this, but then, I sit and ask myself, first of all, let's step back a bit. China, I know it creates the rise of China creates a lot of discomfort, especially
for
in
Americans.
US for Americans because they feel very threatened. But what America needs to realize is, I mean, if I can convert a country as a human being, China has been a superpower even before America was running around in diapers.
Yeah.
That's what someone needs to realize that in the last 20 centuries, China has been the predominant power of the world in 18 out of the 20 centuries. You know, what we are seeing in China is just a resurgence. And look, the Chinese are also not stupid. They have not reached where they are today by doing arbitrary things. China is not. I have mentioned this in the China Maple Leaf video. I'm not saying that the risk is not there. I feel the risk is there in all countries. The country risk to different extent. You know, the Chinese government knows very well that the last thing you would expect them to do is something arbitrary, which will completely shut them out, from any
Mhm.
international capital. I mean, that will be unbelievably stupid. And every action they have taken is moving in the opposite direction completely. For them, the Belt and Road Initiative is a very high priority. China is building a lot of relationships around the
Mhm.
world. I mean, last to last summer, we were holidaying in some, remote Pacific islands. Like we were in Fiji, and then countries like Vanuatu and Tuvalu, and you see the Chinese influence everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go. If you go to Africa, you see it everywhere. So it will be literally suicidal for China to do, uh, something which completely hurts their interest. That is number one. Number two, a lot of people talk of this VI structure as a risk. They don't realize that when you are buying uh, even an American share, American stock through a broker, the shares are not in your name.
It
You
depends
know,
on the broker, and that's a good
that is something which a lot of
subject.
people
Yeah.
don't realize that
Yeah.
the US shares, most of the shares are in street name. Of
Hmm.
course, there are, unless you're investing in Australia where you have a chess account, or in Singapore where you have the CDP. Malaysia has an equivalent thing. What is it? I can't, top of the head, I can't remember. India has something like that where the shares are, I'm talking of even a retail investor, the shares are in your name. In the
Hmm.
US, that's not the case. The shares are held in street name, right? And there have been cases where, brokerages have gone down where, they did not maintain segregated accounts, and all that nonsense has happened. So the there's a huge difference between the risk and the perception of risk. I think
Hmm.
in case of China, it is the perception of risk which clouds people's judgment. Is the risk there? Of course it's there. I mean, in terms of corporate governance, in terms of, I will personally be much more comfortable if the audit process is more transparent, like in the US. But then I also can't close my eyes to the fact that the, I mean, in the last financial crisis, you know, the names which are supposed to be trusted, like Moody's and
Credit rating
Standard and Poor's,
agencies, yeah.
I mean, they were left, right, and center. They were handing out AAA ratings. In fact, just
Those
last
are
evening I was
amazing
watching.
businesses. They've
Sorry?
helped. Those are amazing businesses. They've helped create one of the worst crises ever, and there
Yeah,
they
but yeah,
are.
good businesses. Yeah. In fact, just yesterday I was watching The Big Shot.
Hmm. The
One of my
movie.
favorite. I think this is the second or third time I was watching that. So the thing is, just because something is foreign, just because we are reading a lot of negative stuff about China in the media, we kind of, cloud our judgment. Hey, I'm an Indian, and in India, also there is a lot of jingoism. I mean, the mainstream media, there is a lot of China bashing that goes on there as well. Every now and then you have some border skirmish. But that doesn't mean I form a completely biased and
No,
blanket
no, 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 no. That's
opinion about that.
and I hope I'm not being misunderstood. But for instance, Monish Pabrai, the other, and he's half Indian or Indian. I don't know exactly, but
Yeah, yeah, he's Indian.
um, and I've heard him say that before investing in India, he went there a lot of times. He met with a lot of companies. He went to see if the factories were there because there was a lot of stories about companies that didn't have factories, and they would say in the annual report that there was this factory, that one, that one. So
Yeah.
even Monish, who is Indian, had to go there a lot of times. And I'm giving his example. There's probably a lot of examples that okay, we shouldn't be biased just because of media and all of that, but at some point we have to take care of our money. And if
Oh,
we hear
absolutely.
a lot of
Absolutely.
stories about something, it's better to be careful rather than to go ahead without doing the proper due diligence.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That's very important. All I'm saying is that, the second largest economy, 1.4, 1.5 billion people. I mean, I don't think it's very prudent to write off, you know, oh, China means fraud. China is not equal to fraud, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the point which I'm making. They're great businesses. I mean, I listened to the earnings call of this business trip.com. I'm a shareholder. It used to be called C-Trip. I think in terms of corporate governance, in terms of the way they think, their customer orientation, it would rank absolutely at the top of all global businesses.
Mm-hmm.
We flew down to meet the CEO of China Maple Leaf, spent a whole day there, visited the schools and all, and uh, nothing really changed. It's just that we came back, more impressed than what, and
Mm-hmm.
many of these companies, these are not small companies, operating in a tiny, these are global businesses. Tencent has more investments around the world, almost what, 18 to 20% of their total market cap comes from, the investee companies. They have investments all over. Tencent owns 5% of Tesla. They own, businesses in India and all over. So we are talking of large business. China Maple Leaf, just yesterday they announced a huge acquisition of the Canadian International School in Singapore. I mean, it's just,
Mm-hmm.
the school is just, close to my home where I
Mm-hmm.
live. So you see, you get to know about these businesses over time. You don't form, uh, overnight impression.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still not there when it comes to Pax Global. I need to learn much more.
Another way I remembered Pax Global, we were talking about Kodak, and I get the feeling because I am bullish on the technology of WhatsApp payments, and now with this lockdown, we here in Portugal we are starting to get out and go to restaurants with precautions, of course. But you go to a restaurant and you just scan a QR code and you get access to the menu on your phone. That's nothing new, but it's becoming more and more common. and I
Yep.
don't see why I can't do it for payments. And the Wi-Fi network recognizes immediately my WhatsApp, and my WhatsApp connects with the WhatsApp from the restaurant or store, and then I will pay through WhatsApp, and then these point of sales devices will be like Kodak film or like cameras that they just don't exist anymore, at least the regular cameras, not the professional photography cameras. So that's my thing with PAX. On the other side, it's super cheap. So this is one of those balances that I don't see a lot
Okay,
of.
so just a clarification. So PAX also, so they have launched the Android
The software.
system, POS system, which is actually doing very well, and they also have the QR code scanning facility on there. So there
No,
are you know there are a lot of checks and balances there. In fact, the the way in China the QR code is there everywhere. So there has been some regulations which actually might help PAX, because often unattended uh, sales uh, terminals or sales points of view, it's easy to replace the Q. There have been cases where QR codes have been replaced, and fraudsters, they have been collecting money that way. So that's where, but then the
it's not
important
as
thing.
secure as the card. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And PAX also has, they support QR code payments. In India, PAX is working closely with Paytm, which is growing very fast. And what a lot of people don't realize is PAX actually is, yeah, they have manufacturing operations in China, but China is a very small market for PAX,
Yeah.
because they have lost market share for very good reasons, which Gabriel explained. Right now, 9% of their total revenue comes from China. PAX is huge in Latin America, in the CIS countries. They are also growing fast in some of the European
What I,
countries, India.
you
So,
you are correct with the software thing, but what I always think about whenever I go back to PAX, and I've went back a couple of times, is why is it needed in a couple of years the point of sales, even though you can scan a QR code, why isn't mobile phone with a smartphone with smartphone, right? And you just need the software, and the software, for instance, it could be WhatsApp that's coming with WhatsApp payments, but it could be any other software. I just don't see the need in the future for at least the small point of sales. Then there's those in McDonald's where you have the menu and all of that. Okay, that's a different thing. But the small ones with the card, I don't see it going forward. I don't see the need. And I would, and this is a bet on the future, I would bet that this is almost like Kodak and the film and the cameras.
okay,
I,
I have a slightly different way of looking at it. Uh, my view is that it is very difficult for us to know what the it's a very dynamic landscape. Okay, it's not that PAX is sitting static. They're also evolving their products, their new products, new technology. I mean, there's a lot of software that they're packing into their products. So first of all, they are not sitting static, and secondly, it's very difficult for us to visualize what the payments world is going to look like 5 years down the line. And that's the reason I'm taking a view. So I own Tencent, I own Facebook. I'm looking at PAX Global. I'm looking at some of these companies in both Fan Liang and I. We are actively looking at some of these companies in Brazil. There are a couple of them. So yeah, I mean, looking at Mastercard. So that's the way I would approach this. So rather than forming a fixed view, first of all, I'm not majorly into predictions. I have absolutely not the slightest clue uh, what the payments world will look like 5-10 years down the line. So I think I would rather maybe identify some businesses which will potentially benefit and own chunks of those.
Mm-hmm.
Because what see this is one area, because I have been in a corporate, and this is something which I think a lot of people also miss out, that a lot of investors, they think that they are the only ones who are thinking, but you also have to understand that the management, they're regularly having strategy meetings, and they're also evaluating the marketplace. They're much more deeply entrenched in the market. They're probably watching it firsthand. So what tells me that you know uh, companies are not taking the steps to evolve, as long as it's a forward thinking management, as long so
Mm-hmm.
we are seeing the same thing, right? I mean, Facebook is trying to do the same thing, Tencent is doing that. So it's a very dynamic uh,
Landscape, yeah.
landscape. I would rather own a few businesses and then see how it goes.
Rupam, to end our conversation, you are also a teacher. What would you recommend novice investors, young and old? What recommendation, what advice would you give to someone who is starting right now?
Read, and read. And start with Warren Buffett's letters to his shareholder. That is, written over 42 years. This is like, this is by far the best material. I mean, you have great books on investing and you have Buffett's letters. It's in a completely different planet. No other investing book, and here I'm talking of investing books written by greats, Peter Lynch, Seth Klarman. I mean, I have read uh, most of the popular ones. I mean, there's still much more which I'm yet to read, but frankly, nothing comes close. Because if you look at Buffett's letters as a book, it's a book that has been written over 42 years. The breadth and the depth that he has covered, and his genius, that is to explain things in very simple, humorous terms, I think that has been so. For me, uh, Buffett's teaching, it's like a religion. I'm not a religious person, but you know, it's not about investing alone. Reading, if someone reads his books written about him, like Snowball by Ali Schroeder, or the other one, I'm forgetting the name.
The Making of an American Billionaire,
Yeah,
is that it?
making of an American capitalist,
Or something like that.
something like that. Yeah, I think that's by. Is it by Roger Lowenstein?
I'm not sure. I couldn't say.
Yeah, I think it is. I can't remember, but absolutely. I mean, one is to just read,
Learn,
read, read.
read.
I mean, there's no end to it, and also network. I mean, we learn from each other, right? I mean, talk to people, and think long term. I think that's the most important thing.
Rupam, as always, it was a big, big pleasure. Thank you for this conversation. And I hope that you will accept my invitation for future conversations.
Oh, absolutely, Manuel. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I always enjoy speaking to you, and thanks for having me.